Hello everybody, so I decided to do my video on behaviorism. What is behaviorism? It's the idea that behavior is acquired through conditioning, measures behavior by a learner's response to stimulus. A learner's response to stimuli can be reinforced using positive or negative feedback. So, what are the two different types of behaviorism? Okay. The first kind is operant conditioning. The subject learns behavior by associating it with consequences. You got classical conditioning, where the subject learns to associate two unrelated stimuli with each other. Let's see here. B.F. Skinner, founder of operant conditioning, he learned this by doing an experiment on two different rats. First rat would be put into a cage with a lever. When the lever was pulled, it would dispense a pellet of food for the rat. So at first, the rat just kind of ran around the cage frantically, accidentally bumping the lever every once in a while, getting the pellet of food. Well, eventually the rat picked up on what was going on, which was every time I touch the lever, I get fed. So it eventually got to the point to where all Skinner had to do was just set the rat in the cage, and the rat would immediately run up to the lever, yank the lever to get its food. The second rat was given a more negative stimulating approach. I guess that's how you would say it. It would get put into another version of this cage, but rather than food being involved, the cage would immediately start shocking the rat. So the rat at first did like the first rat did, and ran around frantically in the cage trying to figure out what was going on. Every once in a while, it would bump the lever, the shocking would stop. It would do this a couple times, and then immediately realize, if I pull this lever, I'm not going to get electrocuted. So it would pull the lever. And just like the first rat, it eventually got to the point to where he would set the rat in the cage, and the rat would immediately run to the lever, pull the lever just to keep from getting electrocuted, thus proving operant conditioning for behavioralism, which is, regardless whether it's a positive or negative approach, a person's surroundings will always dictate their behavior they have in those surroundings. Another example of this is, you do good on the test, you study and you do good on the test, you get a passing grade. If you don't study and don't do good on the test, you fail the test. The grading scales that we've grown up with from elementary school, middle school, high school, and even college is the ultimate example of this operative conditioning. Okay. Second kind of conditioning, founded by Ivan Pavlov. It's called classical conditioning. He developed this theory known as classical conditioning through the study of dogs. From his perspective, learning begins with a stimulus-response connection. In this theory, a certain stimulus leads to a particular response. Okay, so his experiment was with dogs. He would notice that if you were holding a dish of food and set it down, a dog's mouth would salivate. You would set the food down, the dog would eat the food. So he introduces a third random stimulus in the form of a bell. He'd ring the bell, hold out the food, dog's mouth would salivate, he'd put the food on the ground, dog would eat. Next day, he would ring the bell, hold up the food, dog's mouth would salivate, put food on the ground, the dog would eat. Eventually, this dog's response to the bell got to the point to where he would just ring the bell, and whether he had food or not, this dog's mouth would start to water because he would associate the bell with getting fed, which ended up proving his point, which is that behavior can be taught, that a person's surroundings don't necessarily have to dictate behavior, but that you could actually teach someone how to respond in any circumstance. So what do we learn here today? We learn, one, that behaviorism is a psychological science centered around human behavior and how a human will respond in certain situations. Two, we've learned that there are two forms of this. Operant, which says a person's surroundings will always dictate their behavior. And then classical behavioralism, which says regardless of a person's surrounding, how a person behaves in any situation can be taught to that person. Thank you for listening. God bless.